Hello everyone. I'm going to show you how to install ArgusCache on your local machine or on your local server. ArgusCache is a tool which should help you to introspect your applications and give you hints and tips on how to performance tune it best. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder here called ArgusCache Test. It is empty at the moment, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and take the download file of Lucee Express, which I have, and unzip it into this folder. And let's do that. Control V. There we go. Now we're going to get rid of all different kinds of things here. And I'm going to hit the startup batch. Okay, while Lucee is installing, I'm going to navigate to ArgusCache.com. When you go to ArgusCache.com, you'll end up on this page, and you'll have a download link here on top. The page will be updated over the next couple of weeks and months in order to contain the latest information about ArgusCache. So if you go to ArgusCache, you can just download the ArgusCache server and the ArgusCache client. Those two files are zip files, so once you download those, they're not found because I've removed them from the server, but there are two zip files, and I have downloaded those files already, and they are available as Lex files. They will be downloaded as zips, but you have to rename them as Lex files. We will change that in the near future as well. Okay, so let's go to that server. I'm using my preferred editor here, or file explorer, and I have these Lex files here. So I have the ArgusCache client, and I have the ArgusCache server here, which is a Lex file as well. What I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to install ArgusCache Server. Therefore, I navigate into the Lucee Server /deploy directory and copy the Lex file in there. And after a minute or so, this Lex file will be installed. This is the way how you install extensions in Lucee if you're behind a firewall. You, of course, can do the same thing over the Lucee administrator or server administrator, which saves you from searching for the correct directory. So we have to wait for a minute, and we'll check back in a second. And if I go to the web root of that application, of that server, I'm going to copy the other Lex file into the webinf Lucee deploy directory. That is the ArgusCache client application, which allows you to use ArgusCache. In addition, I have a sample application, which is called Blogger, which is nothing really fancy. And this application will go into the web root, which is called Blogger, and it just contains a couple of things in here. I'm just going to remove a certain thing, which you will see in a second what it does. Okay, so now let's see whether the two extensions have been installed. First of all, I'll go to the Lucee deploy directory here. It's gone. And in the web root, I have an application, a folder called ArgusCache. And if I go to Lucee Server, the deploy directory is empty as well. Good. I will now restart ArgusCache because the ArgusCache server extension is installing an additional tag called CF ArgusCache. And this CF ArgusCache is at the core, or at the heart of everything. Good. Now my installation is running, and what I can do is I can go to localhost 8888/lucee/admin. This one's completely empty, so I will define a new password and a default password. And if I go back here, I have them already set, so hence I just log in. I just need to set up a data source for my Blogger application. I call it Blogger. The Blogger application is just an application to make visible how ArgusCache is working. Okay, in setting up the data source, and now let's just call Blogger. No, wrong. Localhost 8888/blogger. And here you see there is an application in here which displays the details of the different blog entries, etc. Good. So I have installed the sample application and ArgusCache. So let's open up another additional tab and go to localhost 8888/ArgusCache. By default, what you have to do is you have to log in with the Lucee administrator password. So that's the web app password. And once you have logged in, you will see that there are certain elements, cache elements that have been created for you. You can check that by going to localhost 8888/LuceeAdmin. And under cache, you will see that all these caches have been created for you by default. They are necessary for ArgusCache to function properly. Okay, good. Now, the first thing that you need to do is you need to enable ArgusCache and enable the analysis. These colors here, they will be changed. The default is really pretty ugly, so we need to make sure that these entries here are having the right colors. So I'm just going to change them right now and just give them some kind of sensible colors. Sorry about that, but this will be changed pretty soon. So I hope that the next download that you will receive, there will be a version that already has some colors that make a little more sense. Okay, query. Well, query is supposed to be via purple, so let's take this one here and make it include a little more orange reddish kind of. Submit. Okay, ArgusCache is running, and now you can hit the dashboard. And when you hit the dashboard, what you can see here is the used memory and the server status. The server status gives you information about the average execution time and the average requests per second that are executed by the server. Good. Now, if we go back to the Blogger application and I hit that a couple of times, just hit reload, refresh, you should see here that the number of requests is going up. This seems to be the first number of requests. We had about 600 from a while back, and the axis will be adapting to the extreme values. So as soon as you have traffic on the server status, the axis for this request per second will adapt. And this x-axis is over 5 minutes or 3 minutes. So eventually this number here will be gone. So you will see that in a second. Okay, good. So in order to figure out what's going on the server and whether something worth caching is happening on that server, what we need to do is we need to actually activate ArgusCache for the application. And we can do that by going to the Lucee Express, ArgusCache test, web apps, webroot, Blogger, application CFC. And here what you can see is that we can activate the use of ArgusCache or of the default caching by setting the standard cached within attribute of function HTTP query include in file to smart. Smart is this new keyword you can use for ArgusCache and ArgusCache only. So once I've done that, Lucee will now introspect everything that happens with CF queries or CF functions that have no specific cached within set. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a tool, a local tool, in order to stress my server a little bit. And this tool is called Web Stress Tool. And the web stressor is now, let me just see where that is. So I'm using Web Stress Tool now. I'm using 200 users here, but these users, let's say 50 should be sufficient. And what I do as well is I can start the test right now, and let's have a look how this is impacting our application execution. Let's go here to ArgusCache, and here what you can see is already that the number of requests per second is going up, now at 114, 177, etc., etc. So we will see loads of requests per second. And if sufficient, you can just go to settings and you can change that to 200, for instance, and on the dashboard then you can see how many requests per second you are handling with your application. Good. What we can also see is that the average execution time is, give or take, 60 milliseconds, right? 67 milliseconds. Let's change that a little bit as well and go to 800. And if we go back to the dashboard, you can now see what's going on in that system. Good. Now, what has happened here is that Lucee is analyzing, or ArgusCache is analyzing everything that happens in the background on that server, and tries to figure out whether certain elements with the same call params have been changed or have changed results when they come back. So if I go to the details here to Blogger and have a look, okay, the colors are not very nice, but nonetheless, here I can see I have a function. Obviously, the function is called wait for me. The function has been called 1,200 times, and I have a potential save of 134,000 seconds. Obviously, that's per day. Obviously, that's more than a day. You can see here the total possible execution time that you can save is more than 2 days per day. But since it is parallel execution and everything, we need to come up with a much better visibility of, or a much better display of the potential time that you can save. Okay, so what it tells me here is this wait for me function hasn't changed for 2 minutes and 13 seconds, and it has been called 1,900 times, and it has a payload of 48 bytes. The payload differs from type to type. So I have different types here: function, query, and I have include somewhere later on. And if I list, for instance, everything, and you know, since I'm having a blog here, I can actually cache everything. I could potentially cache everything. But for instance, let's have a look at this detail here. We can go to list query, and we can see that there is a number of records 60, type is query. This is the entry hash, this is the exit hash. It is in the Blogger CFC at line 214. The total execution time is 72 seconds, and the slowest is 223 milliseconds, and the fastest and the average, blah, blah, blah. And it has been called 11,500 times. And the potential save per day is 12,000 seconds. And if you click on View SQL, you can see the SQL statement that has been called there. Good. If I go back to the dashboard, you can see that my server is still very busy. and it still hovers around 200 requests a second, 180 requests a second. So let's go and have a look if we are now going to these entries, go to Blogger, and now I'm just going to go crazy and cache everything that I have here. I'm just going to hit the action inverse all checkboxes. And now I'm scrolling down and say create rules. By the way, these numbers here says, please cache this query for 5 minutes, cache this include for 5 minutes, and this function for 2 minutes. Now I'm just hitting create rules, and now ArgusCache will create those rules. And now let's see how the server behaves. Oh, you can immediately see here that the request time has gone down to 2.9 milliseconds from before an average of 60 milliseconds. So you see that the server is really speeding up a lot, and you can see that the number of requests per second is rising. So it's going beyond 200, so the server manages way more. Now we even need to increase this number to 400. And you can see that we have 210 now, 211, and the execution time goes down to below 20 milliseconds. This is always the average of the last 30 seconds, so you can see a certain delay where it is kind of approaching slowly the average execution time. So this is more or less how ArgusCache is working. Here you can see which rules you have created and which ones are the most effective rules. And here you can see here I have the functions that have been cached, the includes that have been cached, and the queries that have been cached. And what you can see as well is on the dashboard the amount of time you already saved with the active rules. And this is quite a lot. And here you can see the number of times the user these rules have been used. So you see 25,000 per second. And the number of requests has gone up from 180 to over 240. Might even end up with 250 or so. So this is ArgusCache, and there are lots of more things that will follow over the next few weeks, where we will have more blog entries, more videos that we're recording. And stay tuned, and hopefully you like it.